Hey guys, it's Tom Barton from TomBartonSports.com here. And everybody, we have a dangerous topic to talk about today, and that is Colin Kaepernick. But I'm going to take a different approach to it, and I want to make sure that we do this the right way. So, everybody, please, if you like, comment below. If you like it, hit the like button. If you want to, please subscribe to the channel as well. Go check me out at TomBartonSports.com. Hit me up over on Twitter at TomBartonSports, or you could always write me at TomBartonSports@gmail.com. Go check out some of my other stuff that I do, like Believe in the Ivy League with Tom Barton. All right, guys, look, the Colin Kaepernick stuff, it gets a little dangerous. It gets a little treacherous out there, and it gets very personal to a lot of people. So I understand why it gets a little tough. I'm going to try to keep this to on the football field, but obviously some stuff is going to bleed into it. The reason why I'm tackling this again here today, those that don't follow me, I have a 2 decades plus career in radio where I've been tackling it since the issue has begun. The reason why I'm tackling it is because all of a sudden, Colin Kaepernick is seemingly back in the news. Antonio Brown had something to say about it. Michael Thomas had something to say about him. And the more that we get away and the further we get away from Colin Kaepernick when he was an actual player, the more people forget exactly who he was or exactly who he is. So I want to make sure that we go back and we make it a really, really good case against even the most adamant Colin Kaepernick defenders that Colin Kaepernick, at the end of the day, was not a good NFL quarterback and should be nowhere near an NFL roster. Well, look, I'll go out there and I'm going to tell you that, look, Antonio Brown went a little far maybe in what he had to say, but Antonio Brown is agreeing with me, and it's something that I've said for a long time now. Brown called Kaepernick trash, literal trash in regards to his on-the-field play. He was saying he criticized his decision-making. He also didn't like his off-the-field stuff. He didn't like his financial settlement back in 2019. He didn't like all that crap is literally what he said. Now, Antonio Brown has been known to be, a loudmouth. He shoots off the hip. He's not exactly the bastion for, hey, that's the guy that I want on my side with my same opinion. But a lot of NFL players are seemingly agreeing with him. And in the shadows, underneath, where nobody's really talking about, it is the prevailing thought by most NFL players that Colin Kaepernick just wasn't a very good player. Michael Thomas, the Saints wide receiver, retweeted when the article came out. It said Antonio Brown calls Colin Kaepernick trash on the field. I want to keep saying on the field. Michael Thomas came out there and said he ain't lying because it's right. Look, he's not lying. He was that guy. He was not a good quarterback. So to take that a little further, let's start from the beginning. And we start from the beginning where Colin Kaepernick was a college quarterback. Coming out of college, you read the reports and you see scouting reports and you see guys that are paid. You could say scouts are trash, or you could see guys that are paid a lot of money to do correct scouting on certain individuals in college, right? If you're a college football scout, you're going to do your reporting. But it's not only that, it's the players on the teams that used to play or they're in the organization, they're scouting. What did they think of Colin Kaepernick coming out? Well, most of the reports, and I'm going to read one here, said about the same thing. He needs a lot of work with capital A-L-O-T. He has bad mechanics. I'm reading right from scouting reports. They didn't know his agenda. They didn't know, he's going to be with Nike. They didn't know he was going to take a knee. They didn't know he was going to be a social warrior bastion. No, they were only looking at his on the field coming out of college. A lot of work consistently throughout most of this. Bad mechanics was mentioned more than once. Poor decision making, very much mentioned. Can't read defenses, mentioned more than once in a lot of these reports. And you see a scouting report that is leading to bad mechanics, poor decision making, can't read defenses. Okay, look, Patrick Mahomes admitted that he can't read defenses. He did. He said, look, I can't read defenses. But Patrick Mahomes gets by, and he gets by pretty fine. So you can poke holes in some of these scouting reports, but it is a prevailing thought that coming out of college, he had a lot of work to do, bad mechanics, poor decision making. One of the reports actually said whoever's his head coach is going to have to do massive work and reel him in. Well, that is kind of the Colin Kaepernick that I remember. Pro Football Focus in his last season, among the all 33 quarterbacks to play at least 500 snaps that year, Colin Kaepernick was graded as the worst quarterback in 2015. In 2016, he ranked 7th worst among all 30 qualifying contenders. He was about league average before that. So Colin Kaepernick came into the league with, excuse me, Colin Kaepernick came into the league with a lot of question marks, a lot of problems, a lot of issues. He wound up working with Harbaugh and kind of becoming a guy that you go, okay, he's league average. You know what I mean? He's an average guy. He's an average quarterback. And then he devolved into what we're looking at. Not only the seventh worst, then the absolute worst, according to Pro Football Focus. Again, Pro Football Focus doesn't have an agenda, just giving you what we're talking about. Now, his team went 1-10, despite reaching the Super Bowl. He went 20-30 in his career. That is just, I mean, look, he's an underachieving quarterback. He's a losing quarterback. He had 1 year where things wound up working well, but he was an under 500 quarterback, under 500 by 10 games out of a 50-game career. Kaepernick's career high touchdown, 21. That's nothing to sneeze at, but it's also, I mean, is this a starting quarterback? So what he really was he was a playmaker. He was off script. He was a guy that you go, okay, you know what? Throw the ball out there, let him work with his delivery, and we can work with that because he's got the legs and he's got everything else. Remember that for later on when I'm talking about it. Really, his big problem when they talk about mechanics and everything, he had almost a sidearm delivery, right? If you remember Colin Kaepernick, he didn't come over the top like a traditional quarterback. He couldn't because he didn't have the timing for that, so he had a sidearm delivery. Well, his on-target percentage was 22nd among 30 quarterbacks with that sidearm delivery of that through 250-plus passing yards. That's not good, okay? His average yards per air, now we know he had a big arm, but his average yards per air attempt, about middle of the pack, right in the middle. That's according to Next Gen Stats. So he's not somebody that was showing off the good arm. He didn't have accuracy. He had a weird throwing mechanics. By the way, he took more sacks than anybody else, not named David Carr. And he played behind Joe Staley and Trent Brown. So he played behind a good offensive line. You look at the sacks, and that is really alarming. He had the most sack percentage since Carr. That's fact. I'm not just going out there and hyperbole. He had problems reading defenses, which leads to more sacks. And you go back to now that last season, one of the worst quarterbacking seasons in NFL history. In NFL history, Kaepernick had defensive yards adjustment replacement of minus 182. That's 35th in the NFL. One of the worst quarterbacks in the league. You can't go anywhere. It looks even worse when you sit back and you go, what kind of offense did they play? They played a single read offense for Kaepernick. Okay? So they went after week 3, where he had 4 interceptions, and you just said, okay, this guy can't play in the league. They went to a single read option, and he couldn't do anything. Now, again, remember, I just said to you, Antonio Brown called him trash. Michael Thomas called him trash. People come out calling him trash. After that week 4 loss, Torrey Smith and Anquan Boldin, both were very frustrated with the quarterback. They didn't want him to be their guy. Again, this is not a black-white thing. This is not a social justice thing. This is not Colin Kaepernick kneeling and having a vendetta and people not liking him for Colin Kaepernick. No, this is his teammates, guys that were catching the ball from him that wanted to win. He had one of the worst games that we've ever seen. And then he went to kind of a read option. And you know what? It looked like he could kind of figure it out, okay? He could figure out this read option, but you're changing your entire offense, again, for a guy that just can't play. I mean, he cannot play in the league. That's what you're looking at. Now, when the league started to kind of catch up with him and you started to go, okay, look, we can't do this. We can't just change our entire offense for this guy who is just not developing as a quarterback. He's actually regressing. They turned to Gabbard. They turned and they handed the ball over to a guy that should have never been a head coach. A starting quarterback in this league. And his head coach said, I know you're not a starting quarterback, but you're better than my option. And that's Colin Kaepernick. You went to a guy that you knew wasn't a starting quarterback because he was a better option. His teammates were frustrated at him. His teammates were annoyed that he looked so bad on the field. He was airmailing passes. He was throwing interceptions. Normally a guy that took care of the ball up until that season. So I think by all metrics, we could say that Colin Kaepernick's last 2 seasons were absolutely disastrous. And his last season, leading up to that last game where he was benched, he was the worst quarterback in the NFL. Worst starting quarterback in the NFL by far. So then you go to the point of, well, you know what, Tom? Okay, All right, you convinced me that he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL, and all these teams that are looking at him right now, starting, they're not even looking at a starting quarterback. But how can you tell me he wasn't blackballed from the league that he's not even a backup? How can he be so blackballed from the league he can't be a third stringer? Well, let's go into the specifics and the reality. Let's talk facts. 2017, he was unsigned, and he was unsigned in 2018, again in 2019. Okay. And the conversation became because he was kneeling. And the conversation became because of his social justice. And the conversation became because Colin Kaepernick was getting the raw end of the stick. And the conversation became he was being blackballed. Okay. I get it. But let's remember a certain few things. Number one, he opted out of his own contract. Okay. He terminated himself. That's first and foremost. Second, he turned down a contract offer from Denver. Okay. Third, his last season in the NFL, like I said, he was terrible. He still wanted to be paid like a starter. And he made that very, very clear. He made that known to everybody. He wanted to be paid as a starter. He wasn't a starter. He should have been a starter in the NFL. It wasn't good enough. So now you're talking about being a backup. Whether it be then or whether it be now, you're talking about being a backup. Backup quarterback in the NFL, you need certain things. You need certain attributes that Colin Kaepernick just flat out does not possess. As a backup quarterback in the NFL, you're one of two backups, right? You have two backups, direct backups. I'm saying second string. You have two backups in the NFL. Your backup one, which is a guy, you feel okay, plug him right in. You can win a couple of games. I don't want to say he's pushing the starter necessarily, but maybe he's pushing the starter a little bit. A guy that you feel comfortable. If your guy isn't ready, if Kenny Pickett isn't ready, put Mitch Trubisky in there, perfectly fine. That's a good backup. Okay, Ryan Fitzpatrick was always a good backup. I could throw him in for 3-4 games. We're going to win. We're going to go 2-2 over those 4 games. I feel comfortable. I feel confident. That's backup one. Colin Kaepernick is clearly not that because he's not a starter in the NFL by every metric I just told you. Then there's backup number 2. Backup number 2 is a clipboard holder. He is a guy that helps the young guys. He's a guy that reads defenses really well. He knows the in and outs of the game. For years, when Joe Flacco went to the Jets, he's a good backup, right? Mark Brunell was a really good backup. Guys that are able to, you come on the sidelines, hold on, look, well, here's what I saw. Let me tell you. And you teach these young guys, not a threat to their job. You teach them. You mentor them. You're reading defense. You're seeing things that they don't see. Well, Colin Kaepernick couldn't read defenses in college. Colin Kaepernick never read defenses. They changed in his last season. They changed his entire approach. They changed the entire offense to a single read offense, which is like on Madden going to amateur mode, single read offense. And he still couldn't get it. Couldn't grasp it. Couldn't grasp a playbook. Look, he's not the first guy. A lot of guys can't do it. Okay. Not the first guy, but you don't want that as a backup. So now you say third string. All right. Get the guy in the quarterback room. I mean, he's got massive talent. Get him in the quarterback room. And you start to ask, what do you want from your third stringer, right? You don't want a guy surrounded by the media in the third string. No. You don't want people questioning the third string. Why isn't he getting reps? No. Why do I want to bring my undue pressure upon myself for that? Why isn't Colin Kaepernick getting reps? Because he's a third string quarterback. I recently did something on my Ivy League podcast, and I talked about E.J. Perry coming out of Brown. And I said, he's a perfect third stringer. He's a perfect third string guy. Third string guy, what you want to be able to plug him in to any dummy offense, right? Because he's going to play the other offenses when you practice that week. If you're playing Josh Allen, he's going to act like Josh Allen. If you're playing, Matt Stafford, he's going to act like Matt Stafford. Does anybody believe that Colin Kaepernick could be a stand-in-the-pocket quarterback, even in a dummy situation? No, you can't. Now, when I say dummy, that's third string, really. No, you can't. I wouldn't even put him on my practice squad because he doesn't possess that kind of skill. He doesn't possess the skills that you need to be a backup. So Colin Kaepernick had skill. I'm not saying that he didn't. He had some talent, sure, but it didn't translate to a starting quarterback. And if you don't translate that talent and that skill into a starting quarterback, which he failed miserably at, then you get into, will it translate into a second and a third stringer? Well, there's a specific kind of talent that you need for a second and third stringer, and it's not run around the field, hope for the best, improvise, right? That's one of the scouting reports about him. He's good at improviser. Well, being a good improviser doesn't help you on the second and third string. It just doesn't. It doesn't help the team. And that is the prevailing thought here. Colin Kaepernick, while he has talent, he's not a good teammate. He's not a good teammate not only because of what he does off the field, but what he does on the field. What he can contribute on the field is not good teammate type of leadership. He's not a leader. He's not somebody that can be counted on to do different things. He's not somebody that can be counted on to study playbooks. Guys, he's not a good NFL player. He shouldn't be anywhere near the league. Now, I won't go as far as calling him trash on the field, but he wasn't very good. Wasn't a good starter. Shouldn't be on a team. Can we end this conversation for once and for all? I hope Antonio Brown did. Michael Thomas did. His own teammates did. Let's end this for once and for all. All right, guys, excuse me. That's going to do it for me. I am Tom Barton from TomBartonSports.com. Go check me out, Tom Barton Sports, over on Twitter. Have a very good day, everybody.